This is Wilhelm Röntgen. He's a German physicist. In 1895, while testing whether cathode rays could pass through glass, he accidentally discovered a new form of light. This light is generated by changing the kinetic energy of electrons when the speed of accelerated electrons is rapidly reduced under the influence of metal atoms. We call it radiation because it radiates from the center in all directions. Röntgen, who was studying this radiation, laid a sensitive film underneath and laid his hand on it. To his surprise, he found himself with a photograph of a skeleton with white bones. It was the moment that the X-ray, a mysterious radiation, was discovered. This X-ray image of a skeleton was visually stimulating in a way that had never been seen before. It started to grab people's attention. There were also many social clubs that held parties where you could take an X-ray of yourself. Shoe stores started to smell the cash, even installing X-ray imaging equipment in their stores so that customers would take an X-ray with their shoes on. In the early 20th century, X-rays were cutting-edge science, the new shiny toy. It was also a marketing tool, but there would be others who would be even more excited with this invention. This video was produced in collaboration with YouTube EO channel.
How are you with hospitals? We often come across people who hate them. No matter how friendly the doctor is, it is inevitably the space closest to death. It's natural to be scared of hospitals. Perhaps this was even more so in the past. Surgery was necessary even in the days when there was no anesthetic, so patients had to undertake surgery while they were fully awake. Frances Bunny, who underwent a mastectomy in Paris in 1811, writes about her experience. I screamed non-stop throughout the incision. I could feel the blade hitting and scratching against my breastbone. By the middle of the 19th century, anesthetics had been introduced, but the only thing that the anesthetics were able to get rid of was the blood-curdling screams in the operating rooms. Until then, doctors only relied on their sense of sight, hearing, and touch to diagnose patients. In many cases, surgery was performed for diagnostic purposes rather than treatment. Paradoxically, the spread of anesthetics further exacerbated this phenomenon by reducing the burden of surgery. Thus, trips to the hospitals were still a big fear. X-rays have reversed this situation. Doctors who were first exposed to X-rays at the end of the 19th century soon realized something important. They came to understand that you could further apply the fact that the amount of X-rays passed varies on the density of the organ. For example, if you look at an X-ray of a child who swallowed a button battery, only the part with the battery appears white. So we can see exactly where the battery is. When you look at an X-ray of a patient suffering from pneumonia, the lungs that should be black also appear white because the lungs are filled with water. In an X-ray of a patient suffering from osteoporosis, the bones appear darker than normal because of the lack of calcium in the bones. X-rays have allowed doctors to see deeply inside the body without a knife. It was a dramatic change. The minimization of surgery was an important advance that rivaled the discovery of anesthesia. The use of X-rays continued to grow. In the early 1970s, a new technology was invented where a person enters a tunnel-like machine and an X-ray generator rotates within the tunnel, taking multiple cross-sectional pictures. This came to be called computed tomography, or CT. If you take multiple X-rays from different angles, you can see inside the human body in 3 dimensions, as opposed to a single picture taken from one angle. This helps you see exactly what is wrong and where. Advances in X-ray technology allows accurate diagnosis and furthermore, accurate treatment. So hold up, just when X-rays were gaining a definite presence in the medical field, people started questioning the safety of X-rays. Awareness about the dangers of X-rays began to spread soon after the US dropped an atomic bomb over Japan in 1945. Not only the scale of the explosion that blew up the entire city was large, but also the dangers of radiation exposure became publicly known, as people exposed to the radiation from the explosion would start to suffer from various diseases over the next several decades. Questions were raised as to whether it was safe to be exposed to X-rays, which are radiations, even for medical purposes. Of course, radiation doses of X-rays used for medical purposes are significantly lower than doses known to increase the risk of cancer. Dental CTs all the way to whole body CTs, the radiation exposure is between 0.05 millisieverts and 30 millisieverts. The exact consequences of this level of exposure are yet to be proven. However, as the number of diagnoses using medical imaging continue to grow, questions are being raised to the safety of even small amounts of radiation. This includes dental imaging, which are known to have the least radiation exposure. Trips to the dentist are inevitable, even for children. However, radiation is more dangerous for growing children than adults. Thus, in 1977, the International Commission on Radiation Protection set out the principles and international recommendation on how efforts should be made to reduce radiation exposure as much as possible, even if it is essential for medical purposes. So now, X-ray technology has entered a new chapter. While the early and mid-20th century focused on obtaining more accurate images, in the latter half of the 20th century, reducing the radiation dose of X-ray equipment has become one of the biggest challenges. For example, Vatech, a Korean company that mainly produces dental equipment, has reduced the scan time of dental CT scans from 24 seconds down to almost 3 seconds. Artifacts are often generated when producing X-ray images, due to factors such as machine defect or patient movement. Artifacts degrade image quality and causes loss of diagnostic value. When patient movement occurs, they usually have to be re-examined, which means the patient receives unnecessary radiation. However, if you can reduce the time it takes to take an X-ray, then it would be less likely that the patient moves around. There is also another solution: reducing the radiation dose itself. This is an image taken with less than a quarter of the dose used previously. Lower dosage inevitably results in lower image quality due to increased noise levels. However, with the recent development in image processing technology, Vatech has successfully removed noise from their images, achieving image quality equivalent to that of images taken with higher doses. With the help of technological advances and innovations, the radiation dose of Vatech's CT has been reduced by 52.6%. Technological approach in further reducing dose in medical imaging is still being carried out in various parts of the world. Making hospitals a safer place has long been our challenge. X-rays have saved patients from having to undertake unnecessary surgery by making us see what we couldn't see before. We can't give up on X-rays because the benefits far outweigh the risks. Instead, we are learning to manage the new risks this double-edged sword may pose. As always, by developing value-added technology to provide a better life for mankind.